immediately. Okay, we do have a special guest today, so you want to make sure that you're sharing on all your social media. You do not want to miss, and you don't want anybody else to miss the show. My name is Dr. Cherelle Hobson. I'm your student athlete resilience coach and your athletic program enthusiast, an educator for over 15 years. I've had a pleasure of developing a lot of professional developments for a lot of athletic programs to help increase their matriculation to 90%. I'm also the founder of a nonprofit, 𝐶12, that focuses on um, on excellence in academics and athletics and mentoring to help have a lifelong change. As an international speaker and author, I had the honor of doing two books, Unleashing Your Full Potential and Seem to Goal, which has really helped people to acknowledge the current space that they're in and how to overcome any type of adversity that they may experience. And with my doctorates in sports administration and leadership, I'm just so excited about the study of our African American men and the educational. And so I'm very passionate about our community and being very productive in our community. So welcome to the Black Podcast.
Man, all right. I get a little jealous today, especially because two of these individuals have done something that I have been part of, but I haven't quite gotten there yet. I used to run the 4x4 back in my day. Uh, and I'm actually 2 years deep into my PhD. And Dr. Cherelle Hobson, she beat me there. So my name is Brian Street. I'm the founder and CEO of Your Legacy Begins Now. And it's a social business that I put together to really start to generate revenue in various different streams, from coaching to training to mentoring to consulting, working with various different financial institutes, various different community organizations, but developing funding revenues to go towards delivering and implementing programs that are going to address some of the issues that our transitional age adolescents are going through. So that's the vast majority of where I put my time, my energy, my emotion. And outside of that, just really aiming to be that example of what a young Black man is to grow to be, but also always putting in front of other individuals, people like our guest today, to where we can see that it doesn't really matter where you came from. It doesn't matter how difficult the struggle was behind you. But if you start today by putting yourself around the right people, putting the right things into your mind, you can start living your purpose. And that's why I titled my company, Your Legacy Begins Now. So we're going to go ahead and get rolling.
I don't know if they're ready, B. I don't know if they are ready for our guest. Okay, he got on the tracksuit. Got on his tracksuit today. Got on his spikes, so he's gonna give it to you. He's gonna give you the whole thing. We got Mr. Tyree Washington in the building. He is a 400-meter world champion. I'm not talking about he's the fastest in the neighborhood. Okay, we're talking about he is fast. Okay, but he has a strong and impactful story. So we have Mr. Tyree Washington in the building.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm just very eager to have this conversation with this gentleman because he's made it to the pinnacle of the sport when it comes to track and field. I grew up, I grew up running and having everybody commending me on my speed. Brian, he just looks forward. He don't keep looking back like everybody else. That's why he's beating everybody else. But I don't know, Mr. Washington, maybe give me a run for my money.
Yeah, so, we might have to meet him on. We gotta meet him on each side. You get on one side, I get on the other side.
We have to hold him down a little bit. Right? This gentleman is a 400-meter world champion in track and field, but also an NFL alum, former law enforcement peace officer, and motivational speaker. I've done my motivational speaking during my day, but I'm so interested in hearing what this gentleman brings to the table. And he just aims to encourage, motivate, and inspire people from all forms or all walks of life. And he believes that if people face adversity, have a positive mindset, and surround themselves with positive people, like I just said, surround yourself with positive people, they can also overcome their adversities. So I want to say welcome to this gentleman, Mr. Tyree Washington. How is it going?
I feel like we need a drum roll.
I know, right?
Drum roll.
I'm waiting
Where's
for
that band at? Where's that drum line at? No, I'm super excited. I'm super excited, guys, to be on the show. I think it's great. And we can all just share our stories. 'Cause I truly believe stories change lives, and it's great fellowship, because I think that's what we need, just to get open and just empower people, and just focus on the positive things in life, and not just the negatives, because there's a lot of negativity floating out there, as we all know. So I'm super excited about
Absolutely.
chat with you guys today.
Yeah, we are excited to have you here. I was like, man, we got a track star. We ain't talking about a regular track star, but we have someone that's like for real fast. You know, you got those people that are like PE fast. You know, I've been in education
Right.
for 15 years. I got
Yep.
parents that be like, my son, my daughter, you know, she really fast. And so I'll be like, yeah, I'll be the judge of that. Like, you know. Usually it don't work out that way. I'm like, here, you could throw the
Yeah.
shot put, or hold this bag of water. But we're just excited to have you here, and we know that you have a powerful story. So we're gonna get rolling. I did share it on my Facebook, so it's on yours. So make sure you share it also. Again, everyone, we have Mr. Tyree Washington in the building on the Black Podcast. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. If you can just let us know. We know a little bit about you through your bio, but I know that in your book, your first chapter was born into the struggle. So I'm sure I'm sure that has something to do with your background. So if there's anything that you feel you want to share with us about, you know, where it all started, where you're from, you know, a little bit about your life, so we can kind of get to know you a little bit better before we dive all in your business.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of things dive in my business, but it's okay. I'm willing to share just to give it. I was born and raised in Riverside, California. My mother, my grandmother raised me, and my mom is from Natchitoches, Louisiana. My grandmother is from Bermuda, and so I grew up in an environment, and I talk about the village a lot, like in my book, and the village was very hostile. It was crazy, as most of you all know if you read my book, and I was surrounded by the gangs, the drugs, the prostitution, all of that, and for me that was like, day in and day out, it was like that was my norm. And I remember when HBO came out on Showtime, and people were excited about that. I'm like, I didn't need HBO on Showtime, because there was something always popping off in the village. It was crazy. I mean, you didn't know if somebody was going to get shot. I mean, it's unfortunate. Somebody getting robbed. I mean, they selling drugs like in the back of the apartment, like as if you're driving through to pick up some food at the fast food joint or whatnot. But but yeah, it was crazy. But for me, I always had that desire inside that I wanted to do better, and I wanted to help my mom. I wanted to help my grandmother. And a lot of times, that it's being a young people, and being in a hostile environment, a young African American person, is that if that's all you see every single day, and that's all you know, you think that it's not going to get better. But you have to cling to somebody that is positive, cling to somebody that is moving in the right direction, making the right decisions, and that want to be successful. And that's what I did. And I was able to have an outlet by going to my recreational center, which was Bryant Park, and they have this old Mexican guy named Raymond. And he was just he came from a tough background, and took me under his wing and all the other kids in my neighborhood, and he was like, you can be someone with your life. So he helped out a lot, and I'll be forever grateful for that, because I have so many surrogate moms and dads out there, so many of them.
Absolutely. And I think, like you said, right now we live in an age where people can't do it by themselves. It takes, someone pouring into you, a stranger off the street, a neighbor, somebody in the grocery store that can really pour life into you. And we know that me and Brian are very passionate about our community and the youth. And, we think that a lot of times, as Black people or people in general, but especially us, we're so prideful, right? And so it's hard to really take advice from other people, because number one, we don't want people in our business. Number two, we don't want people in our business. And three, we don't want people in our business. So we always internalize, and we never really get to capitalize on the people that we meet, and the things that they sow a seed into our lives, because we're so focused, we're so driven, and so
I think that's
go ahead.
I think that's the problem too, though, is that that's been our culture, that's been embedded in us.
Right.
Is that if you don't say nothing to anybody, what goes on in his house stays in his house.
Absolutely.
But the problem is that it just, whatever you're dealing with, it starts to manifest, it starts to build, and it's just like you blowing up that balloon, and that balloon can only hold so much air before it eventually will pop. And so when you have all these emotions inside with anger, rage, and frustration, depression, I mean, you have suicidal thoughts. It gets to a point to where you can't take it no more, and then that balloon pops and you pop, and you don't know what's going to happen. You may go on a gambling rampage. You may be homicidal, and you may be suicidal. You don't know. So it's important for us to get out of that, get out of what we've been taught, and to talk to people. Obviously, you got to talk to people that you can trust. But the African American community, we're so big on, just our religion and our relationship with God, and we pray. But I'm like, it's like, okay, if we praying to God and we're asking for help, it's like we got to open our mouth, because a closed mouth don't get fed. You got to open your mouth so you can help.
Right.
And so we got to get out of that, because if not, all we're doing is like we're self-sabotaging ourselves, and that has been working out for us over decades.
Absolutely. When we talk about, I did track my whole life. I was a track runner, and
a quarter horse. So it's Brian.
You already know. Look, I didn't want to be. I can tell you a quick funny story. So my mom, coaches was calling and recruiting me for school, and in high school I ran the 100 and 200, and that's what I was going to stick to. And so recruiters were calling, and one time a coach called, and I'm like, hello, and my mom is saying hello on the other end. So the coach said, hi, this is Coach Crawford from New Mexico State, blah, blah, blah. He's talking, and he's like, we would love to have you at the school. He said, however, I know you run the 100 and the 200. We really would like for you to run the 400. And so right before I can say, hell no, like my mom was like, yeah, she'll run it. What else you want her to run? I'm like, he's talking to me. So yeah, that's how I got into it. She said, you're going to run whatever he tell you to run. But I mean, I learned to love it once you learn it, but I didn't want nothing to do with that 400.
Well, I think a lot of us have the same story. All of us quarter milers have the same story, because I started off in the 1 and the 2. I mean, Quincy Watts, who was, I trained with Quincy Watts, who was my teammate. He started off in the 1 and the 2, and then converted to the 400. But the 400 is not for everybody. I mean, it's a man and woman's race, and if you're not mentally strong to be able to handle sprinting over 4 football fields, you in trouble. And it's not for the faint of heart. So, you have to be ready, but it tells a lot about your character. That no matter what happens, that we're still gonna just hell or high water. We're gonna still keep pushing forward. We're gonna defy the odds, and we're gonna get what we want. I mean, that's why I look at like people that run the quarter show. Absolutely.
We know that sports has an impact on our mental, and Brian is he's very passionate about mental health and the psyche of, young Black men and women. And so, Brian, what do you feel like when we talk about these sports, and a lot of times I think people, they get so caught up in just the whole rim of athletics, but they don't really realize what athletics does for you for the rest of your life, as far as, your mental. And so that's something that Brian really touches on. Brian, if you want to go ahead and tag team on your specialty there.
Man, I'm telling you, I got more degrees than I need, and community, especially here. I'm out of South Mississippi, man. You don't find a lot of guys out of South Mississippi with a college degree, let alone 3 working on a 4th one. And I appreciate it. I'm very big on understanding and articulating the difference between the science and the art of academics, of anything in life. When it comes to mechanics of the body moving, there's certain mechanics that you're going to learn in the textbook, but your body composition is different from the next person. So you have to learn the art of how your body works within the science of what the books say about your body. So when it comes to the mind, when it comes to the brain, and this is one of the things when it comes to running that I use a lot in my training and my coaching, is sometimes whenever it gets tough, be it actually running or be it running through life, sometimes you have to physically shut off from the physical and realize, what? It's all up here now. Like the body said, no. The body said, I'm done. So it's all up here. And I remember I was running my first and only so far half marathon, and I got about 7 miles. Got about 7 miles in, and I started cramping up, man. I started cramping And I'm telling you, it was a hill coming. And I'm like, man, I'm not gonna make it up that hill. I'm not going to make it up that hill. So I literally, I kind of scaled, the width of the road, and I closed my eyes, and I just visualized like mechanical legs. And I'm like the endoskeleton of the Terminator going up the hill. So it ain't my muscles that's working right now. I'm gonna let this thing up the hill. And I'm telling you, we so often get caught up in the present and the trials and tribulations that we're going through right now. We can't visualize what's on the other side of it. So we allow ourselves to be blind of what's holding us back, and we visualize and we see clearly that which we're going towards, we can get to it so much more easily. And I'm sure that you had some trying times throughout your athletic life to where you had to overcome some challenges. You had to really put the mind over matter. And as cliche as it sounds, mind over matter, the law of attraction, it is real, but you will never experience it until you put it into action. So share with us a little bit, man, when it comes to any of the struggles that you faced, any of the obstacles that you had to like take your stuff out of the physical and realize, you know what, if I want this, I got to go all mental.
Well, I'll tell you, like in high school, I was heavily recruited in football. A lot of people don't know I was a football player. That I ran track and I enjoyed that, but that was not my passion. My passion was to hit people. I wanted to knock you out, play free safety. That's what I love to do. And I played free safety, play corner, and
free safety corner.
Yep. And so I signed with University of Oregon, and things didn't work out academically because I came up short on my SATs, and so there was a coach. His name was Blackman. He was the assistant track and field coach at San Bernardino Valley College in San Bernardino, and he asked me, he said, "Why don't you come over to my college?" He said, "I want to turn you into a 400-meter runner," because I ran 46.3 in high school, just chilling. I mean, just messing around.
You just had to put it out there, huh? Just chilling, huh?
I was chilling. I mean, I still work, but it was just, I was like, dang, I ran 46. I'm gonna be in great football shape, like great. So I decided, I was like, when Oregon didn't work out, I went over to San Bernardino Valley College, and he told me from day one, he said this. He said, "You were a professional athlete in college." And I remember I looked at him and I was like, "What?" I said, "You understand I'm at a junior college?" And I talk about this so much over and over again. And so I started. So he said, "You're going to train like one, think like one, dress like one, everything." He said, "You can do all of that, because when you become a professional athlete, it's not going to be a shock for you. It's going to give you a culture shock for you." So I started training in the fall of 1996. And 9 months later, in May, I broke the national record, won national. I was runner-up. Then I got bumped up to national champion, won a bronze medal, beat Michael Johnson. So I ran through obstacles because of my test. And then my...
Wait.
You can't just...
I beat Michael Johnson. Okay, so we're going to move on to...
It's just like,
I don't know. I think you need to repeat that saying. I don't know.
Yeah, so
he said it like he racing the homeboy from the neighborhood.
Hey, well, people have to understand my mentality, okay? My coach, Black Lee from Nigeria, he instilled in me that even though Michael broke the world record in the 200 in 1996 in Atlanta, he broke the Olympic record in the 400. He was like, "He a man just like you." I qualified for the 96 Olympics. My coach, and he intentionally said, "You're not going to go run. You're not ready." So when I met Michael, when everybody else was in the call room and they just ducking and dodge, and they like, "I'm gonna get second, third, or fourth, or fifth, or whatever, and I'm gonna make X amount of dollars," I'm like, I'm about to take him out. And that was my whole mentality. So when I talk about Michael, and it's like, and Michael's a phenomenal athlete. I got much respect for Michael because he's amazing. But my mentality is that he's just like me. He's not any different, and he bleed like me. He sit like me, and so it's like I'm the best in the world. That was my mentality. So like when it rolls off my tongue, like, yeah, I beat Michael Johnson, because for me, I don't think of it like, I just look at Michael as that's just Michael. But most people, they stop me in the podcast. They say, "Wait a minute. What did you just beat Michael. You just talk about him like he was some kid that was in a neighborhood that you just unloaded on, but it's Michael Johnson." But that's just the mentality. I'm so grateful for my coach, because what he instilled in me, and over the visualization, he had me visualize beating Michael. He had me visualize winning the world championships. So I got a bronze at the world championships, being the number one 400 meter in the world. And I will see myself walking through the tunnel. I will see myself walking on the track, getting into my blocks, hitting the phases of each 100 meters in the quarter mile. And so when I actually had to do it, I was like, man, it's already done. Like it's already happened. I mean, and that's the whole point. Like when I about it's just like my coaches were cone freaks. They put a cone every 100 meters. They say, well, see yourself running 12 seconds at each cone. At each that cone is at 100 meters. And so I would close my eyes, visualize myself hitting 12 seconds. I'm 48 seconds around the board, and so visualization. I mean, Brian I mean, you're spot on. It's extremely powerful. And with me dealing with losing my scholarship, my girlfriend got pregnant. I mean, I gave my scholarship up. I mean, and me dealing with my asthma. A lot of people know I have asthma really, really bad. I take a steroid every single day. I got to take it for the rest of my life. And so when I was competing, I mean, most of the time I was sick. I wasn't even healthy. My breathing capacity was like 75, 80% on a good day. So if the weather was like it's raining, I'm competing overseas in Europe, and it's raining or maybe really hot, like a lot of wind, a lot of particles in the air. It would mess me up. And so, but I had to fight through all of that because I go back to the visualization. I saw myself winning. I saw myself, defying the odds and blocking all that out, putting the blinders. I don't care that it's windy. I don't care that you have breathing problems. I don't care that you're on steroids. I mean, taking this inhaler that you have to take steroids every day, and so all that I blocked out, and it all came together, and I was on that podium, many times.
Yeah. And like you said, when I had ran, as soon as I graduated from college, I had a desire. I wanted to make it to the Olympics. I wanted to be a part of the Olympic team. So I started training and and just kind of trying to prepare myself for, doing those meets, those last minute meets to try to get in on the practice team and all that kind of stuff. And when I came short of that, I was like, okay, so what should I do now? So I got this passion about coaching. So I started to coach a program, started coaching, got my first, I think I was maybe 22, 23 years old, 24 years old. I got a chance to be a head coach over a 5A school. And so going into, you talk about losing your scholarship and stuff like that because of academics. So when I went to this program, it was predominantly Black and Hispanic. And so I came in there with this vision of, look, these are all the things we're not going to do. Okay, we're not dancing at track meets. We're going to be very focused on what we're doing, and so we used to have study hall. If you remember in high school, we had study hall. And so the girls would come in for study hall, and I'm sure some of them are watching this show, and they can be like, she's not lying. Come in the study hall, and if there was something on my heart that day or that week or something I felt needed to be addressed, I would put a big word on the board. And that's what we would talk about during study hall. And, at the time the girls was like, are we going to go practice? And I just knew as a coach and through my experience as being an athlete that if I didn't teach them about life, I was doing them an injustice, because I felt like if I knew how to get to them and teach them the importance of being a woman and the challenges and the things that are going to arise in your life, if I can get them to get that, I can get them to do this track thing like it ain't nothing. And so I started training them on what they're supposed to do and who they're supposed to be. And they didn't understand it at the time, but then a lot of people from the outside said, how are they winning every single championship? How are they making it to the state meet every single year? And it almost seems like they do more talking than they do running. And so people don't really realize the mental that goes into track and field. And you talk about the influence of coaches, and you talk about those people. I think a lot of times right now, our athletes or our young youth, they're so focused on the sport, right?
Right.
And we know that it's a wonderful thing. It's nothing like being a college athlete or a world athlete or a professional athlete where you can travel around the world doing something, getting paid for something you like to do. But it's nothing like knowing your gift and knowing yourself and knowing who you are, and that this gift that you have is just an asset to who you are. It's not, a part of who you are. And a lot of our kids are so tied into the sport. Without the sport, they don't know what else they're going to do. So when you talk about, these transitioning, you went from law enforcement to track to football to this to that, obviously showing that you were on this journey of, whatever it was. and I'm sure track had a lot to do when you think about your training. You know, we know life is about, you got to condition for it. You got to train for it. Life is endurance. You know, you got to be able to, some things you got to go fast, some things we got to slow down. And we talked about that before we got on the show. Washington and I was saying, you know, we have to tell ourselves sometimes mentally, slow down, because we're just so used to always pressing and pressing and pressing. So what do you tell the youth now, with all the COVID going on, with all the, you know, the police and all this stuff that's going on? How do you keep the youth encouraged to say, you know, if athletics is not around, you know, how do you, what are the words that you say to them to keep them encouraged, or to keep people encouraged, period? I mean, what would you tell them? Because right now it seems like we're in a very discouraging, you know, time of our life. I know I'm having to talk myself up sometimes just to live my own life, just because of the things that go around me, or just because of things that are going around. So what are your words? What are you telling people, you know, whether it's the world, whether it's an athlete, what is the right thing to say right now that's going to get people encouraged and pumped up to want to do the things in life that they have put their mind to, or set their goals to accomplish?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that what we all want is hope. That's what we want, hope. I mean, that's what we want to know that things are going to get better. And what we're going through right now is nothing new. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of, I mean, we're dealing with the racial inequality, the police profiling, police brutality, and all this stuff. I mean, we're in a technical world now to where things are becoming more, you know, all these things that are happening is coming more to light, and everybody can see it. But it's been happening for a very, very long time. And so, which I'm really happy that it is coming to light, because we can address it even more now, and we can try to really get down to, like my grandmother used to say, get down to the nitty gritty and get this stuff resolved. But what I talk about a lot is that, like I said, with the whole COVID thing, it's not nothing new. Spanish flu, 1918, it hit 50 million, 100 million people died worldwide, right? They overcame that. So when you look throughout history about all the stuff that we're going through in our lives right now, like I said, somebody's already gone through it. So we have to read. We can read about those people in books. We can listen to them on. You can go to YouTube and look at the archives and listen to the words that they've spoken and listen to their story and how they overcame a substantial amount of obstacles to be who they are. And if we can cling to that, we can cling to like the people that have gone through the things we've gone through and they made it. That's going to give us hope to keep pushing forward. Now, if those people never existed, if the Spanish flu never happened, and we have nothing to reflect back on that, hey, those people are going through trying times and all this trials and tribulation life, and they did not make it, then we'll be in trouble. I mean, but I think it goes back to your faith though too. If you have a relationship with God, I mean, I have a relationship with God, and I know that when I feel down, I'm not always up, because a lot of times when you do all this great stuff in life, you get all these accolades. People think that you're always up, and I'm not always up. I'm not. Sometimes I get frustrated. Sometimes I get sad. I get depressed, and my wife's like, "What's wrong?" But then I resort back. Then I go back to what works for me. Say, okay, I go read my Bible. I go read Job in the Bible, because I know Job been through a lot in his life, and I know he overcame that. So that gives me hope. Like, hey, Ty, keep pushing forward, and you're going to get better in life. So that's what we all need to. That's what we all need to do. That this is not everything. Like I said, the COVID, the police brutality, and the equality. It's nothing new. We're going to get over it. Martin Luther King, he fought for us many years ago in the 60s, fought through segregation, fought through, we overcame slavery. We overcame so much. So if we overcame that, and yes, we're dealing with the same issues now, it's going to get better. It's just a matter of time. But we all have to change the way we think it, because if 90% of your thinking is negative, you're gonna get negative. You're gonna get negative in your life. So you gotta, and the 10% is only positive. So you gotta flip that sucker. If 90% of your thinking is positive and 10% is negative, you're gonna get positivity in your life. So it's all about changing the way you think. It's all about introducing people to the resources and the tools to say, hey, you know what, you're not the only ones. Because sometimes, we get caught up in our feelings and we start thinking that, kind of woe is me. That, this is the only person, I'm the only one that's going through this, whatever it may be. And we're not. That's not the case. Things I've gone through, somebody's gone through, before me. And I have to reflect back. And that gives me hope. Hey, like, Tyree, get out your feelings, man, and keep pushing forward. I don't care if you get socked in your stomach. I don't care if you get knocked down. Get your behind back up. Keep taking those baby steps, and those baby steps will turn into bigger steps, and eventually you will get to where you want to be. So that's what I instill in people, that is nothing new, and the hope is there. The hope is planted, but you have to. Some people, they're looking elsewhere. That's where their focus is at. They're focusing on all this bad. I mean, life is not it's not about a fallacy. In every single race, there's somebody that's doing bad. In the African American community, Chinese, Hispanic, whatever. And so if we think just because you got a certain amount of people that are doing bad, the whole race is bad, that's not true. Everybody is doing bad. We all have issues. We all fall every day, and we have to look at each other as we're human beings. We bleed blood, and when we pass away, we're gonna go down 6 feet under, and that soul gonna leave the body just like anybody else, throughout history. So, and once we start focusing on that, and we start treating people more with respect and treat people how we want to be treated, I think things will run a lot more smoother. But it will not be perfect. It's never going to be perfect, and that's my issue with the whole social media. Is that everybody wants to have a certain amount of numbers, and I get it for a business standpoint that you want to be able to. It's a numbers game. Is that you want to get clients, whatnot. But you know what? I found a lot of people, they sell their soul just to get those followers, get those likes. And 𝐤𝐤𝐢𝐻 talks about that a lot. And instead of just being organic, being authentic, and just being who you are, listen up. There's 7.8 billion people on this planet. I mean, you may as I tell people all the time, you may not, certain group may not like you. But guess what? They're gonna be they got billions of people that will like you. So don't be tripping on this certain type of group or the certain individuals. I tell my daughter, hey, she's 15 years old, I got a 10-year-old, and hey, as you get older and the guy may not like you, I said, baby girl, don't worry about that. You just keep on pushing forward, but you take care of yourself. As an African American girl, you take care of yourself. You don't get caught up in some man that got a nice house and car and money, all that stuff. You go become the entrepreneur. You get your degrees, and if they come with that, you're like, no, I'm sorry, boo. Listen, I'm well taken care of. What else are you gonna bring to the table? Absolutely. You see what I'm saying? That's why I teach my girls and my sons too. So, but that's what I talk. I think, and Brian, because you work with so many student athletes, and you can relate to this, that we all have to switch hats, right? We have to switch hats. At some point in time, you may be the last line of hope for whatever young person comes into your life. They may not have a mom or dad. You may be the mom and dad. You may be the psychologist. You may be the pastor. You may be the deacon. You may be all of it. So we have to just switch the hats. I switch the hats all the time. I love what I do. I'm passionate about it. And even when I transitioned out from athletics, I went to law enforcement. Everything was still under one umbrella. It was all about helping people. And that's why I'm in the business, for helping people to get better, because I know they can get better. So
and
y'all got me on fire.
I know. I'm like, hey, but one thing I feel like is that, and I thank you for that, just being very vulnerable, because we know that in vulnerability there's growth. And when we're able to open and expand ourselves, we're able to help other people. And so, one of the things that I also struggled with was I was so used to, because I was, good and competitive in track, that it helped to kind of cover up some of the insecurities that I didn't even know I had or that exist in my life. So as I got older, as an older woman, and there was no more track, it was kind of like, now you have to deal with who you are. You no longer have that thing that everybody knows you by. Oh, that's 𝐤𝐤𝐢𝐻, that's the runner, that's Tyree Washington, that's the this, that's the that. So, who really knowing who you are as a person. And when you talked about, beating Michael Johnson, you're like, well, I always look at him as a regular person, a man who, pulls his pants on like me. And even now as an adult, people will say, well, you're doing, Sherelle, you're 39 and you already have a doctorate and you're doing this and you're doing that and you're doing better than most. And I'm like, I don't compare myself to most.
Exactly.
I compete with me.
Yes, and that's right, because I like my buddy, I don't mean to cut you off, Dr. Sherelle, it's like my buddy, Bernard Williams, he ran the 200 meters, won a silver medal. He always talked about stay in your lane. He says, man, stay in your lane. People just need to learn to stay in their lane. It's no one knows your walk. Right. We don't know Brian's walk. Nobody knows my story's out. But they know a lot of it. But when just everyday people out there in the world, we don't know what that person has gone through to get to where they are today. You know,
Right, right,
you're 39, you drop your degrees, you got your doctorate, you got all this,
right.
but they don't know what you have to go through. People always
They
look at
don't know, and you don't have. And what I realize is that you don't have to spend so much time trying to explain to people what it is, right? So I just
yes,
said, if I can, because I wonder why I was so overwhelmed with, trying to convince people of my purpose and trying to convince people of who I am and why my goals are so high and why I'm not happy with what I'm doing. And I felt so mentally drained about that. And so I wrote a book called Seams of Gold, Discovering Beauty and Brokenness. And the whole purpose of that was people saw, oh, girl, you smart, you beautiful, you got this, you ain't got no kids,
right,
you got it all together. And I was
right,
like, if you knew how I felt when I came home at night and I had to deal with my own self, and that's when it helped me think about, what does beauty really look like? Is it something that we see, or is it something that we feel? And so I just really wanted to discover who I was as a woman. And I think that sometimes as an athlete, we have that competitive edge, and sometimes things in life are not always going, you can't always train for, right? Some things
right.
come up that are unexpected, but that's the great thing about who we are, is that we able to adapt. You'll never know that we had that challenge because we bounced back so quick. We're
Yeah,
resilient people.
that's right.
And so I'm just so excited about the fact that you're so vulnerable and that you open it up, because I know that you talked about the importance of the conversations you have with your daughters. I have a very strong father in my life. We got somebody saying they need a copy of your book on there, so we're gonna make sure, Mr. Wilson, we're gonna let you know where to get the book. I know it's on Amazon, so
Yeah, yeah,
just
we gonna get everybody out.
so we just need to really, when you talk about the conversations you have with your daughters, I feel like it is so important for fathers to have those conversations with daughters. Now, I'm going to tell you this. Now, my father, I did an interview a couple of years ago, and someone asked me, it was like Father's Day. And they said, well, what's the difference, between a father and a dad? And I was like, I didn't know there was a difference, right? But I was blessed to have someone in my life who,
Right,
he's always been there. He was my father. He was my dad. He was my mentor. He was, he didn't become my friend until I got a little bit older. Because, when you're parents, you're like, we ain't friends. You're going to do what I
right.
ask you to
That's right. Yeah, friend. Yeah,
do.
yeah. Ain't no
Yeah.
friends.
But now I can say my dad is one of my friends. I can talk to my dad about things in my life. But I know that there were some great things that I learned from being how to be a woman from just learning my dad. My parents been married for over 40 years now, but I learned a lot from my mother, but I learned a whole lot from my dad, just on how to treat a man, how to be as an independent woman, when to know to be dependent and
Right.
independent, you know. And so when you talk about those relationships, if you can just talk about, what is the conversation? Is the conversation different when you have a conversation with your son and when you have conversations with your daughters? Do you feel like the conversation is different, or do you feel like it's kind of almost the same? And if it is different, why is it different? Why are those conversations?
The conversations are the same for me, for my son and my daughters. I mean, and because I just keep it real. I mean, I know as far as like, it just, my boy being a young man, and how one day he's gonna go out there and he may interview. He has a girlfriend now. My oldest son is 24 years old. I have like bad intentions, so I got to come in and real and just tell him, hey, you gotta vet people. You can't just take people's word for stuff. And the same thing with my daughter. I'm open and honest with my daughters, and we talk about menstrual cycles, and we talk about the boys and how they're gonna come at them and what they want. And I mean, with sex, we talk about all of that stuff, because I tell my daughters, just like my sons do. I mean, all my kids, that I don't want you to feel like you have to sneak around. I say, tell me what's up. Just be real with me. All right. I mean, I know everything about life, but I know a lot, and I've done a lot of stuff from the street. I know the game. I know what's up. So they come and they be like, man, Dad, how did you even know that? I said, I wasn't born. I mean, your parents say, well, I wasn't born yesterday. But
Yeah.
but it's important, because when something goes down, especially with my little girls, 'cause obviously they get emotional, and just like they'll say, hey, Dad, this is what I'm feeling, or they may be embarrassed about something. My daughter, when she started her menstrual cycle, she was like, Dad, like, what is this? Like, and what's going on? And so I had to talk to her. I said, and she was embarrassed. And I said, baby girl, ain't nothing to be embarrassed about. I said, that just happens. I mean, you're a young woman. One day you'll be that woman, but it's a part of the process. And And I just talked to her, and she felt so good, and then she and it just reinforced everything with our relationship, that it made it just stronger. With my son, it made it stronger because he knows that I'm not perfect. And I think as parents, sometimes our kids may look at us that they may perceive us as like, well, we're just perfect, we do everything right. And I'm like, no, I'm a hot mess. Like they know, I mean, they see me, I'm like, I mess up, but then it's that accountability. I'm like, listen, hey, I dropped the ball. I'm sorry, I'm gonna do better. And I want you to be better because I want my kids to be better than me. I don't care what they do. I think when you have that type of relationship, I think it makes the kids more open. They want to talk about what's going on in their life, and then they're gonna want to push forward. They don't have to necessarily be like you, but they'll do something that they love to do. And that's what I encourage. And I encourage that with my athletes because I work with a lot of athletes, and because I'm switching the hats all the time,
All
switching the
the
hats all
time.
the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's just families is very important. There's nothing like learning things from your mother, your father. And then you also have that, like you said, that village, your teachers, your coaches, your counselors, all those different people in our lives that help contribute to who we are. Um, when you right now I know you're doing motivational speaking. You're What else are you doing? I mean, I know you have a lot of stuff going on, but what is Mr. Washington doing right now that if he could spend the rest of his life doing this one thing, it would be what?
It will speak every speaking. Like I would spend the rest of my life speaking to people, empowering them, sharing my testimony, helping them just become better people, and that's what I want in every fashion of life. And if that's within your marriage, if that's within academics, this athletics, whatever. Because we all have issues, and I put a little post up on Instagram that it doesn't matter if you live in the Beverly Hills or the ghetto. We're all dealing with some type of issue, and we're trying to overcome the issue. I want to be the one. I want you to look at me and be like, man, this little knucklehead kid from Riverside, California, went through all this stuff, and he made it. I mean, and he's successful. So I want to be successful, but because life is short lived. And one thing, my coach, he's like the closest thing to a pops that I ever had, and he said, and he always tells me, he says, hey, the cemetery is always hungry. It's never satisfied,
And
and
the
that's
devil is always busy.
and he's always busy. He's always
Yeah.
there. And so for me, it's just to be able to plant those positive seeds everywhere I go, and just try to lift people up. Like I said, try to treat people how I want to be treated. I mean, that makes me feel good inside. And when I have athletes, they call me if they're going to law enforcement. They got their degree, they get married, and they, hey, Coach Ty, man, I'm getting married, or I'm starting this new career, starting a new business. I mean, I love that because
Yeah.
I have played a part in their success, because people say it takes a village to raise a child. But I kind of a little twist on that. Is that, well, you can be in a village a lot of bad people, and those people have like bad intentions and raise that
Yeah.
child up the wrong way. So you have to be very conscious of your surroundings and who you're with, and just if that's friends, that's even family, it's family
Right.
as well, and coworkers. So it's very important. But I've been working on a movie deal. I'm talking to Christian Turret, who's a
Hmm.
famous film director, and we're talking about a Netflix series or a movie. Haven't really decided yet, so we're just kind of ironing out some details and see where it's going to go. But that's been kind of one of my goals is to have a Netflix series or movie, like it's like All American. You've seen the Netflix series All American with Spencer James, and so we're kind of going to model that, model that in a lot of ways, and just kind of share my life. I mean, everything's in my
Yeah.
book, kind of share my life out there, and it's just to empower more people. Just want to
Yeah.
help them. So, but yeah, that's what I'm doing. Is the movie, Netflix, speaking, doing a lot of virtual stuff, a lot of podcasts, and I'm still like getting used to the whole social media stuff because I'm old school. I remember 8 tracks, the 8 pages. We all this. I'm
Okay.
still getting used to all. Yeah, yeah. So like, you know, I'm still getting used to all this stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm learning, but I'm always willing to learn.
Yeah.
I don't know everything, and I wasn't the smartest kid in school and even in my class. But what I did do is I tell student athletes is that if you're having a problem in your academics, get with somebody that is smart. I mean, a closed mouth don't get fed. Ask them for help. See, I need help in whatever subject that you're struggling with, and they'll be willing to help you. So,
We have
for
a
all you athletes out there, make sure you do that.
we have a question here that someone said they need some answers. So he said, as a coach for 30 years and coaching of all levels from the NFL to high school, it has been tough. I was a head coach, a college track coach, and he said you're giving some great information. He said, what do you tell young people today, and how would you handle the pandemic and maybe young people realizing sports are not all that they have? how would you teach them to catch up on life? And he said, I think a lot of athletes are scared. Some coaches are scared as well. So I know we touched a little bit on that. So we talked
Right.
about the athletes. If you can just very briefly tell what are your words for encouraging the coaches, the people that are doing the things that they love, and having to have they have to have those conversations with their athletes. What do you have to say to, before we get off? What do you have to say to those coaches? How do you keep them encouraged so that they can continue to do the things that they love and encourage the students or the athletes that they want?
I'd tell the coaches to keep doing what you're doing. Keep being authentic, keep being organic, and keep loving those student athletes. Keep supporting them like you've been doing for so many years, and that goes a long way. And I think